Well, in the days since Iran launching hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel, the world has wondered what Israel's reaction will be. Meanwhile, Iran's president says the tiniest invasion would bring a massive and harsh response. So joining us live now is Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, representing Illinois' 3rd District, so that's covering parts of Cook and DuPage County. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So Israel's war cabinet has met at least 5 times to talk about how they'll respond to Iran's attack. You know, you've condemned both Israel's attack on the embassy and Iran's retaliation. So can you just touch on this and a possible response from Israel?
Yeah, I mean, look, I am worried. Truthfully, a number of us here are really worried. And what we've said is we have to make sure that all aggression stops. If our #1 priority is to be able to prevent a regional war from happening, Israel responding and Iran responding back is only going to drag us into a regional war. And that only takes away the attention from the thousands of children that are dying in Gaza from famine, right? So for those of us here in Congress who want to see us prevent a regional war at all costs, or from us having to engage in a regional war, we have to ensure that Israel, that the Netanyahu government doesn't respond back, that we now call for aggression to stop, and that we de-escalate and move into diplomacy, which some of us have been asking for the last 6 months.
And National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the U.S. will be imposing new sanctions on Iran for the attack in the coming days. But can sanctions be effective as Israel keeps moving the needle with any other military action against Iran?
I mean, let me be clear. Netanyahu wants the U.S. to get involved and the U.S. to take the bait, right? That's exactly why they did what they did to the embassy in Syria. And I worry that these sanctions, in many cases, are not going to work and are just going to add more pressure or more fuel to the fire than actually getting us to a place where aggression stops and we get back to the priority, which is a ceasefire. I know the president has called for a 6-week ceasefire. You know, I'd like to see a permanent one. A ceasefire period would be the very first step for us to be able to begin to see some kind of stability and a place and a pathway to peace. Additional sanctions are only going to add more pressure and more fuel to the fire.
And also, let's shift gears now to immigration for just a lack of time here. Chicago City Council voting today on some more funding to house and help migrants. And you just recently returned from visiting the Darien Gap, that really the dangerous stretch of jungle that so many migrants we've heard have traveled through. What do people watching here at home need to know about what you saw there and what you're bringing home here with you?
Look, what I saw there, I will never unsee. It was a global humanitarian crisis. I saw a 3-year-old little girl from Haiti carrying a gallon of water as she and her mom got off of a canoe after 7 days in the jungle. And that little girl might end up in Chicago. We have a global displacement that's going to require a global response. How does Panama respond? How do we, as the U.S., Canada, and other countries, address the issues that are forcing people to leave in some cases and displace 2-3 times? That little girl is Haitian, but she was born in Peru. There's a lot to be done. And that's why I think as we think about what's happening here, the issues of mental trauma, right, that people are going through, and the prioritization that this government and our Congress has to give to help cities like Chicago to get the humanitarian aid they need, have to become a priority. And it's why in my community project funding, I gave Onward House, an organization in my district, $3 million to help new arrivals. But certainly the city of Chicago needs more, like $200 million from the federal government. And I'm working with a number of my colleagues to double down on that emergency assistance that we need to get through FEMA, through the State Department, and through other sources directly into Chicago.
And I know there's a measure that's also being considered where the city of Chicago is asking nonprofits to step up and help run some of the shelters, but still there's a funding concern there. There's somebody has to still pay for it.
That's right. I mean, look, I ran a homeless shelter, so I would have been one of those nonprofits 10 years ago when I ran a nonprofit. These organizations have the resources. In many cases, the shelter system in the city of Chicago has been ran by the vendors, by the nonprofits. I think that is a good strategic way to approach and get the services that people need. But ultimately, it is our responsibility as a federal government to fund these initiatives. This is not an issue of Chicago. It's a global issue, and it didn't start in our southern border. In some cases, it's starting as far as China. So we need to have a global approach and immediate emergency funding to get to Chicago.
Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, thank you so much for your time and for joining us here on the stream. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Adrina. Appreciate you.